Most people don't go broke because of one big decision. They go broke because of thousands of tiny ones. The silent wealth killers, the fees, the habits, the lifestyle creep, all of those little things that drain your money quietly, consistently, and without apology. Today, we're exposing them. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unshackled for Life. We're unlocking prosperity and liberating wealth. And I'm your host, John Green. All right. Thank you for joining us, everybody, again for another episode of Unshackled for Life. Today we're at season 2, episode 2. And the topic today is silent wealth killers. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's jump in. I want to start off by talking about what these silent wealth killers are. I'll go through a series of them and we'll talk about how you can avoid them. These silent wealth killers, they're the small, sneaky financial leaks that feel harmless, but then over time, they compound into long-term debt, into unnecessary stress, and financial stagnation. They're the things that you don't notice, all right, until you're wondering why you're living paycheck to paycheck, and also why your paycheck disappears before that month ends. So today we're going to address some of these things, and I'll give you some advice for each one on how you can unshackle yourself from it and remove those things out of your life. Things that keep people in debt. All of these little things are, all these little, I don't even know what to call them, just pesky, like I said, wealth killers. Just the little leaks in our financial ships that often keep us from moving full steam ahead. All right. No, I'm not a Navy guy. I really don't know much about Marine terminology, but let's go anyway. So, one of the ones that often get people in trouble is is lifestyle creep. And I'll be honest, I didn't know where to put this. There's no order to this list. It's just different things. I almost wanted to save this one for last, but I figured it's probably better to start with it because I think so many people are guilty of it. So, lifestyle creep is when your income rises and you instantly raise your lifestyle, usually above where that increase, what that increase is. So, for example, you get a new job and, you're excited and you're like, hey, now that I have this new job, I'm going to go ahead and buy a new car. Or maybe you get a raise at work and then you're like, think I'm going to move, so I can have a nicer place. So you get a nicer apartment, which means a nicer, rent payment. Or even if it's a house, a nicer mortgage, a higher mortgage payment. Maybe you get a bonus and the first thing you do with that bonus is, I don't know, maybe you go and subscribe to something. Something that's going to take money out each and every month. So little things like that, lifestyle creep. The reason why it keeps you stuck is the moment that your income raises or rises, you also increase your spending. And just marginally, the margins never change. You're always kind of stuck in a certain area. And worst case scenario, you raise that lifestyle above what the raise was, and now you've made yourself worse off than you were before the raise. So what you can do is to break free from doing this. When you get a raise or you get a bonus, you get some, unexpected money, couple of things. Number one, if it's a new job or a new raise, you know, Allow yourself to get used to that raise before you start making big financial decisions. Give yourself a few months before you start making a big decision like buying a new car or moving to a different, more expensive area. Another thing you could do that'll instantly build wealth, increase your savings. Use that difference, in lifestyle, whatever the difference is in income, instead of raising your lifestyle with it, increase your investments with it. So put that difference into savings or investments. And another thing is that you can do before you make a purchase, after you've gotten a raise or a bonus, just ask yourself, is this a thing, like whatever you're considering doing with the money? Is this something you want, or would you prefer financial freedom down the road at some point with it? So, is the thing, current want, does it outweigh that long term goal that you may have? All right. So, that's lifestyle creep. Another one, and I talk about this a lot, subscription overload. Having a bunch of subscriptions, a bunch of tiny, they're small, they're tiny. It's the true definition of a wealth killer. They are there. They are just slowly every month, just taking a little bit of your income. You don't really notice it until you notice it, and then when you do notice it, usually, it's because you don't have enough money to pay for something that you really want or really need. With all of these subscriptions, keep track of them. I was reading a statistic recently and it said most people underestimate their subscriptions by 200%. So you might think you're only spending $50, but you may actually be spending $100 in subscriptions, because there are a lot of things that you may not consider. And then there are some annual subscriptions, such as like Amazon Prime, to name one that I know kind of gets me sometimes, where, whenever it hits me at the beginning of the year, I'm always like, oh yeah, Amazon. I forgot about that one. But, little, doing, look at those subscriptions. Something you can do is, keep track of those subscriptions, keep like a little journal or tracker on a spreadsheet or something. Be aware of what they are. Cancel anything that you haven't used in over 30 days. Chances are, if you haven't used it in a month, you're probably not going to use it. You can cancel some of those things. And another one is you can try to find bundle deals, or just downgrade certain subscriptions whenever necessary. Maybe you signed up for something thinking you were going to do it at this level, but then you realize, I probably could have done this lower tier. So, downgrade when you can. Manage those subscriptions. Let's see. Another one I have here is banking and investment fees. Those are definitely, I wouldn't necessarily call those silent wealth killers, because you kind of know when you mess up your bank account, and you just need to learn not to mess up your bank account when it comes to like overdraft fees. Um, Pay attention to those things. Make sure that you are minimizing those at all, at all in all ways possible. Investment fees happen. You may want to talk to a financial advisor, see if certain investment fees are worth it, or if there are other options that don't require as many fees. One thing I know of is, when it comes to investing, depending on, if you're doing stocks and ETFs and mutual funds, things like that, there are certain um, index funds that have very low fees, if any at all, compared to certain mutual funds that do carry fees. So that might be something to look into, just to, when it comes to investing, but definitely check with a financial advisor for those sorts of things. I'm not qualified to tell you what's best for investing. Impulse spending and emotional buying. This is a big one for me. I've made this mistake multiple times, where I bought things out of impulse or emotion, and it's turned into financial nightmare. Well, one of them in particular, one that I can think of, turned into quite the liability. But when you go out when when you go out to buy something, when you're stressed, you're bored, you're tired, you're leaving yourself open to buy things on impulse. And believe me, the marketing world is there to catch you slipping. They want to, they want to play with your emotions. They want to trigger an impulse purchase. So be aware that there is a whole, there's a whole thing that's there designed to get you to buy things. And you have to, you're going in there thinking that you're going to be okay, but they already know how to play with your subconscious. So you're kind of at a loss already. So try to limit that impulse spending and emotional buying. If you, you know, if you do it, I've done it. I do it. All right. It happens. It happens. You have a bad day at work, you're feeling pissed off. And you might be like, you know what, man, I'm going to buy this because I think I deserve it. That's an impulse purchase. And usually it is brought on by some sort of emotion that, of a want. So the way you can break free from those, you can do things such as incorporate that 24-hour rule that I've talked about before, where you wait 24 hours before you buy something. Just, that way it kind of, you're kind of making sure that it's something that you really truly want. All right. Not necessarily a need, it's a want. So you're just confirming if, how bad you really want something. Um, Another thing you can do to kind of stop impulse purchases, especially online, remove your credit cards, your saved credit cards from different websites. That way, if you have to purchase, you have to go through that whole motion of typing in your credit card number, your expiration date, and all of that. Sometimes that's enough to make you say, yeah, the wallet's way over there in the bedroom. I'm way over here, on the other side of the house. I'm not worried. I don't really want it that bad. So, something like that, it can kind of, that extra barrier of protection there, that extra step might be enough to where it'll keep you from making those sorts of purchases. And then another one is you can replace emotional spending with some other form of emotional regulation, whether that's, go out and exercise instead of wanting to sit down and spend money. Um, you can, there's different things you can do. Go take a walk. Just, do something else. Do something else. All right. The next one is the small treat mindset. And I kind of mentioned this earlier with the emotional one, which is, this is that I deserve it mentality. This is when something happens and you're just like, oh, I deserve a small treat. For me, that's usually a milkshake. That's usually my small treat thing that kind of gets me. But for you, it might be a daily coffee run. It might be some sort of fast food, a convenience purchase. Sometimes it's like a Uber, taking an Uber ride instead of catching the bus or something, or maybe it's like, door dashing a meal instead of going out and getting it yourself. Things like that, they just start to add up. One thing that, I kind of mentioned earlier with the emotional buying, there was a time in my life, just a short story here. There was a time in my life where I was really upset with my marriage, and this is my first marriage, of course. And I was tired of, just sick and tired of the situation I was in. My ex-wife had done something. We won't go into what it was, but she did something. And I kind of said, you know what? I got a response to that. I'm going to go do something for myself because I deserve to do something for myself. I've been up here spending the money on all these bills and doing this, doing that. And, she's been over here living her best life. And here I am, living basically pulling this house, paycheck to paycheck. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go out and buy a vehicle. So I went out, I secured a loan with my credit union, just a little signature loan. And then I went out and I found myself a Jeep, one of those Jeep Wranglers. Bought a whole car, you guys, out of emotion. And also, I won't call it a small treat because it was a whole car. So I went out and bought myself a car. It was used, and I paid. I used the signature loan, and I can't say I paid cash for it, but I did pay. I used the loan's money to pay cash for this vehicle. So I did that, and that car turned into, as they say about Jeeps, just empty every pocket, because that's pretty much what you do once you join that Jeep world. You just start finding all kinds of things to spend money on for, just to make those Jeeps cooler. So, hey man, I was part of that lifestyle for a moment, and man, what a money drain. What a big money drain. So, for the small tree culture, you can kind of do the same thing as I mentioned earlier, kind of use that 24-hour rule thing. You can also monitor those credit cards online, kind of remove credit cards from online stuff. You can also, you can give yourself a cash, set up like a convenience budget, a small treat budget in your, in your weekly or monthly budget. Just kind of set that money aside already. So that way, it's not really, it's a treat, but at the same time, it's an expected treat. So therefore, you're budgeting for it. It's not really draining your money because you've already expected it to come out. All right. You could try meal prepping if it's like, eating out and meal type things. You can kind of meal prep a few days out, uh, just to kind of keep that going. And if you use things like Uber instead of other public transportation, maybe you just use the public transportation instead. You just kind of choose to use that instead. The next one I have on my list is high interest debt. And this one, we don't need a whole lot of explanation for how it's a wealth killer. We know it's a wealth killer, and honestly, it's really not that silent because it's kind of in your face. But when you're using things like credit cards, payday loans, buy now, pay later plans, I know that's a big deal now, especially on websites. That interest can add up real quick at the end of the month. So again, I don't necessarily consider this a silent wealth killer, because this one I feel like is more in your face and you know it. But I would say, with some of these buy now, pay later things in particular, usually we have great intention to make sure that we're paying those things off each month. But you get too many of those, then it might be hard to keep track of. And you'll start going into, you'll start feeling some of those interest payments from those programs, and that will drain your wealth pretty quick. So to break free from these things, to break free from that high interest debt, I mean, that's what we're all about. Those are those golden handcuffs that we are truly trying to break free from here at Unshackled for Life. So, prioritize paying off those high interest debts first, just so that way you're eliminating these sorts of things first. Because, like I said, they're not really silent wealth killers; they are in your face, big wealth killers. So hit them in the mouth. Um, if you can, try to negotiate a lower rate with those companies. If you have a lot of high interest debt, consider, maybe consolidating it into, to reduce some of those interest payments. This next one here is pretty good. It's more of something you can do to avoid these wealth killers. You can track your money, because when you don't track your money, that's the silent wealth killer there. If you don't know where your money's going, then it's pretty much already gone. So be aware of where your money's going beforehand. Have that budget. You really can't change what you don't measure. So you have to track your money. You have to be comfortable looking at where you are financially. Things you can do to break free. Hey, track your money for a month. Check your bank account statement. Shoot, every day if you want. You can try to create a simple budget. There's something called the 50-30-20 budget, where 50% of your money goes to your wants. I'm sorry, to your needs. So your housing, car payment, stuff like that. 30% goes towards your wants, things that you want, and then 20%, that's yours. That's like your money that you're saving. So that's something you can try. And definitely review your accounts on a weekly basis. Monthly, at the least, but I would recommend weekly basis. Check your bank accounts, make sure that things are where they're supposed to be. Another lifestyle wealth killer. Worrying about what other people are doing, trying to keep up with the Joneses, trying to keep up with what other people are doing. Um, this can come from comparing yourself to people that you see on social media. It could be peer pressure, family expectations, um, friend groups, things like that. So, you have to understand that at the end of the day, it's not their money and it's your money, and it's not their future, it's your future. So you kind of have to you got to take the selfish role when it comes to your money. It's yours. It's not theirs, and your money should not be there to impress them. You're basically living someone else's highlight reel instead of taking care of your own. So things that you can do to break free from this lifestyle, trying to keep up with other people. If there are certain people in your life that where you see something that they're posting on Facebook or Instagram or something, and it kind of triggers you a little bit, unfollow those accounts. All right? Like, just unfollow them. You don't have to unfollow the person, but just kind of, just turn off notifications for them to where they kind of start to fall out of your algorithm and your feed. You can also, when you're in person, you can just tell people, hey, that's not in my budget right now. So if your friends are like, hey, we're going to, I want to go to this super expensive restaurant, but it's really not within your budget at the moment, just say, hey, it's not in my budget. There's no shame in that. And if there is, think about that friendship. And also, you can build a social circle. This is another one. You can build a social circle that will value discipline over display. All right. Find you some friends who are more impressed by your retirement plan as opposed to whatever shiny new car, that the neighbor's driving or something like that. I almost didn't want to put this one on here, but I put it on anyway. Another silent wealth killer is ignoring your credit score. When it comes to your credit score, this is where I'm definitely different from Dave Ramsey and some other folks. I believe that credit is important. It's good to have a good credit score because you never know, when you're really going to need that credit. So I believe it's good to just keep it in good standing. So when when you ignore your credit score, you might miss some things that are on there that are bringing you down. And if you have a low credit score, I promise you're spending way more on other things besides debt. Like you're paying more for things like car insurance, possibly housing, other things as well. Like, it could be, well, I said housing, but definitely like your car, things like that. All of those things. And even if your credit's bad, it might even cost you a job because some employers actually look at your credit report. So, be sure to have a pulse to keep a pulse on where your credit is, just so that way, you can keep yourself in a good position credit wise. So things you can do, make sure you're paying everything on time. Try to keep that credit utilization under 30%. And check your credit report annually. You're allowed to do that with the credit bureaus. So be sure to take advantage of checking your credit annually. Just kind of do a deep dive into what accounts are showing up and, what these people have collected about you and your name. We've talked about some really, we've talked about quite a few wealth killers. I'll kind of do a quick, I'm not going to go in depth in them, but I just want to kind of mention or just name the ones that I've listed so far. So we had lifestyle creep. We talked about subscription overload, investment fees. Yeah, those were those ones. I said that's in your face. Let's see, you have the impulse spending, the emotional buying, small treats, the I deserve mentality. High interest debt, that's not silent. Not keeping track of your money, trying to keep up with other people's lifestyles, and ignoring your credit. So again, I said this at the beginning, wealth doesn't disappear overnight, it leaks. It doesn't vanish in a moment, it erodes. So, it's important that you identify the leaks so that you can patch them. And then from there, you can reclaim your power. So, again, not a big, maritime person, but if you're thinking of like a ship, if all these little holes are in your ship, all this water's leaking in and it's going to start to sink you, right? So it's important to identify those leaks, patch them up, and then from there, once you start to empty out all that unnecessary water, then you can reclaim the power of your ship and get it moving in the right direction faster. Let's take a short commercial break here. Ever feel like your paycheck controls you more than you control it? Like invisible chains are holding your future hostage? Well, it's time to break free. Most people were never taught how money really works. They're stuck in survival mode, living paycheck to paycheck, hoping things will magically get better. But freedom doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. I'm John Green, host of Unshackled for Life and a financial coach, helping people rewrite their money story. If you're ready to stop feeling trapped and start building real freedom, consider this your wake up call. Visit us at www.unshackledforlife.com and schedule your session today. So if you're listening right now and you're realizing, wow, these silent wealth killers are hitting me harder than I thought, then this is your wake up call. Not tomorrow, not next month, but today. Because awareness without action keeps you stuck, but awareness with support, that's where transformation can happen. So I want to invite you to a free 15-minute hello call with me. It's not a sales pitch, it's just a conversation. A chance for you to get clarity on where your money is going, what's keeping you shackled, and what your next step toward freedom could look like. You don't need any exact numbers. You don't need a spreadsheet. You just need a willingness to stop letting your money leak away quietly. So go to unshackledforlife.com and book your hello call. That's unshackled, the number 4, life.com. Your freedom starts with one intentional step. All right, everybody. Now that we've had a chance to talk about what those silent wealth killers are, I gave a few steps for each one, things that you can do to break free. But I want to give you some practical steps that are sure to help regardless of which of those silent killers you're dealing with. Silent debt killers. Yeah, we won't say health killers. All right. So, number 1, build awareness. We talked about this in the mindset in episode 1. Building awareness, becoming aware of where your money is going. So track your spending for 30 days. It's really, truly the first step to liberation. Number 2, you can automate your freedom. The way you do that is by just starting to automatically save your money. So instead of, we talked about those subscription services and things like that, how those little things just come and they constantly take away your wealth. Well, let's flip the script. Instead of little subscriptions, how about we give little bits of our money and put it into savings and investments, things like that, debt repayments. So if you set it up to where it's automatic, you're more likely to become very consistent with it, and you'll find your financial ship beginning to rise. Number 3, let's cut out some of those silent killers. So pay attention to where, if you can relate to any of those financial killers I just mentioned, let's take some of those things away. Let's remove them. So whether that's cutting out some of the subscriptions, minimizing fees or removing certain fees that we're paying, looking at those, keeping that credit score right so that way you can have lower interest rates, things of that nature. Trim the fat, and you don't have to necessarily cut out what you're spending on, but just cut out those things that you really truly are not using. Number 4, create a freedom plan. So, give yourself a goal, whether it's a 12-month goal or a 6-month goal. Maybe it's a 2-year goal. I don't know. But create a plan. Those who fail to plan to fail. I believe that was said by Benjamin Franklin, if I'm not mistaken. But, make some goals, whether it's to pay off a certain amount of debt, maybe it's to save a certain amount, invest a certain amount, or reduce your expenses by a certain amount. But whatever it is, create that financial plan. And then number 5, build a support system. Again, surround yourself by people who have a similar mindset. Accountability will accelerate freedom. So find an accountability partner. You have coaching. That's what I'm here for. There's community. Get some clarity, and that clarity can help change everything. I want to leave you with one small but powerful step. So I talked about these micro action steps in episode 1. So here's your micro step for today. It's something that you can do today that starts to rewire your relationship with money. And I call this your daily number check. So all you have to do, some point today, log into your main bank account and just look at the balance. You don't have to have any thoughts of judgment. There's no thoughts of shame. I just want you to be aware, become aware. Check where your money's going. Just kind of, scroll a little bit through some of your expenses so far this month. It's not really about where your bank account is and the number that's attached to it. I'm trying to build that mindset. I want you to have the courage to face your reality. Don't run away from it. All right? It's there. You cannot liberate what you're afraid to look at. So I want you to really build this habit of checking your number daily, even if it's just for, a few seconds. I just want you to just like in exercising, the more you do it, the more regular it becomes. And you're going to build that muscle that leads to financial freedom. If you can do this every day for the next week, just take one look, take one breath, one moment of clarity, and then watch how your confidence begins to shift when it comes to dealing with your money, because you're aware of it and you'll know more about it. Well, everybody, that's all I have for today. So thank you for watching and listening to Unshackled for Life. I want to remind you, I'm John Green. I'm your host. We talked about silent wealth killers today. Remember that they only win, those silent wealth killers, they only win when you ignore them. And, but once you see them and once you name them, you can start to take back control. Freedom isn't loud. Wealth isn't loud. But both of those things are intentional. And every intentional choice will bring you one step closer to becoming unshackled for life. I want to wish all of you a great day. Thank you for watching our episode. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. All right? Look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everybody.